The Paingala Upanishad in simple English, presented by Svayam Prakash Sharma, Part 4, the concluding part, Chapter 4. Then the sage Paingal asked sage Yagyavalkya, "Respected sir, what is the nature of action of a knower? What is his condition?" Yagyavalkya replied, "Dear Paingal, the one who seeks liberation, having the quality of humility and other good qualities, safely carries across the ocean of worldly existence 21 generations of his class. And the moment he becomes a knower of Brahm, he then carries across 101 generations of his class. Dear Paingal, the body is like a chariot, and the self, the Atma, is the lord of this chariot. Know the intellect as the charioteer, as the driver of the chariot, and the mind as the reins of the chariot. The senses, they say, are the horses of this chariot, and the objects of the senses are the paths, are the roads on which these horses range over. They are the roads on which these horses travel. The hearts of the knowers of Brahm are so many air chariots." The great sages declare that the self or the Atma, associated with the body, the senses, and the mind, is the actual enjoyer. Therefore, Narayan, the great Lord, is actually established as the self, as the Atma, in the hearts of all beings. The one who seeks God, after finding Him and becoming one with God, becomes the self, he becomes the soul, he becomes the Atma of all beings. As long as a person's previously commenced karmas remain unspent, as long as a person's previously commenced deeds remain unspent, so long does he function like a snake who has not yet shed its skin. His body does not fall off until the karmas, until the deeds which have started waking reach their end. He who has attained liberation, though he possesses a body, though he possesses a home, yet he wanders about homeless like the moon in the sky. He gives up his body either at a place of pilgrimage or in the house of an eater of dog's flesh. Then he, the knower, attains aloneness. After scattering the vital airs, he attains aloneness. The body of the knower, who has lived the appointed and full course of his life, after his death should be cast away as an offering to the 4 cardinal points, or else it may be buried. Burial is prescribed only in the case of a person who is eligible for the order of monkhood, only in the case of a person who is fit to become a monk, never for others. On the death of a mendicant who has become Brahm, no purificatory rites are required to be observed by his blood relatives. No rituals connected with the funeral fires are required to be performed for such a person. No oblations in the forms of balls of cooked rice, no pindadan, nor offerings of water or tarpan, nor rituals on the new moon and other days should be adopted for such a one. Just as in the case of food that has already been cooked, no cooking is done, in the same manner there is no cremation of the body of a knower of Brahm whose body has already been burnt in the fire of austerity. For one whose body has already been consumed by the fire of knowledge, there is no need for the performance of the Shraddha ceremonies or of any other obsequies. As long as there is the limitation, as long as there is the boundary that the pupil does not know as much as the teacher, so long should the pupil serve the teacher. He should behave in the same way with the teacher's wife and children as he would behave with the teacher himself. With purified mind and purified consciousness, full of patience, and with the thought, I am He, full of patience, when he attains the realization that I am indeed He, when the Supreme Self, who is the basis of all knowledge, gets firmly fixed in his heart, when the body attains the state of rest and inactivity, then does the mind, dazzling with the intellect, become void of its functioning. Then the mind stops its functioning. For one who is satiated with nectar, what is the use of milk? He has no use of milk. In the same manner, what is the use of the study of the Vedas? For one who has perceived the Self, the Atma, he no longer has any use of the Vedas. For the yogi who is satisfied with the nectar of the knowledge of Brahma, there is nothing whatsoever that has yet to be achieved. He has achieved everything. And if there is anything still to be achieved, then it means that he is not yet a knower of the truth. Remaining aloof, yet not aloof, remaining in the body, yet not of the body, the innermost self, the innermost Atma becomes the all-pervading Brahm. After purifying the heart, thinking of Brahm all the time, the perfected one, free from all ailments, the perfected one, such a yogi should perceive, he should know that he is the all, he is the transcendent, he is the blissful. As water poured into water, as milk poured into milk, as ghee poured into ghee, becomes the very same without any differentiation whatsoever. In the same way, the individual soul and the Supreme Self also become one without any differentiation. When the body is lit up with the flame of knowledge, when the understanding becomes indivisible in form, then the knower should burn all the bonds that bind him with the fire of knowledge of Brahm. Then he who has attained the form of the Self, then he who has attained the form of the Atma, being firmly established in that state, which has no boundaries, which has no limitations, he should then enter the state that is holy, the state that is known as the Supreme Lord, the state that is of non-dual form, the state that resembles ether, devoid of impurities, like water that has flowed into water. He is not like a fish in water, but he is like a drop of dew in the sea, merging his identity completely in the sea. The self that has a subtle body like the ether, that self which is present in all beings, is not seen like the air. That self is motionless, both outside and inside. The self present in all beings perceives and knows with the torch of knowledge. No matter where the knower of the self dies, no matter how he dies, he becomes merged with Brahm at that very place, just like the all-pervading ether. The knower who knows the self to be indissoluble, like the ether in the pot, reaches independence with the range of his knowledge spreading out on all sides, just as ether in the pot merges with the all pervading ether outside the pot once the pot is broken. In the same manner, the liberated individual soul merges in the universal soul when it transcends its limitations of bondage. Performing penance for 1,000 years, standing on one leg, such austerities do not deserve even a 16th part of the merit obtained through concentrated meditation. Even if one were to live for 1,000 years, one would not get to the end of the study of the scriptures in his search for what constitutes knowledge and what has to be known. Since a person's life is unsteady and short, therefore, what is to be known is the subtle, imperishable existence that is Brahm. Therefore, one should give up the study of the whole array and network of the many and endless scriptures, and instead, one should meditate on the truth. As long as the seeker does not attain the knowledge of the eternal truth, so long does he keep himself engaged in the endless ceremonies, in the observance of purity rituals, in prayers, in the performance of sacrifices, in paying visits to places of pilgrimage as prescribed in the scriptures. All these, though they help a person to realize the eternal, they are not ends in themselves. They are but means to the realization of the eternal. For the great souled person, the surest way to liberation is the conviction that I am Brahm. There are two terms. One, that which leads to bondage, and one, that which leads to liberation. The sense of mineness, that this is mine, the sense of ownership leads to bondage, while the absence of the sense of mineness, that this is not mine, a conviction of lack of ownership, leads to liberation. With the sense of mineness, with the sense of ownership, both the person and his soul are bound. And with the absence of the sense of mineness, with the absence of the sense of ownership, both the person and the soul are liberated. When the mind rises to the state of enlightenment, then the sense of duality goes away forever. Then duality never appears again. When the seeker attains the state of enlightenment, then he attains the highest state. No matter where his mind goes, it always remains in the highest state. Transcendent Brahm is well established everywhere. A person who is tormented by hunger, if he were to strike the ether with his fists, or if he were to chew any amount of chaff, his hunger would not get appeased. For one who does not know this, that I am Brahm, liberation does not take place. He who studies this Upanishad every day, he is honored as holy by fire. He is honored as holy by air. He is honored as holy by the sun. He is honored as holy by Brahma. He is honored as holy by Vishnu. He is honored as holy by Rudra. He attains the merit of bathing in all the sacred waters. He becomes accomplished in the study of all the Vedas. He becomes disciplined in the performance of all the vows prescribed in the Vedas. He attains the fruits resulting from 100,000 recitals of the Itihasas, the epics, the Purans, and the Rudras. He is one who has recited the syllable Om many, many times. He sanctifies 10 previous and 10 future generations. He sanctifies all the people he dines with. He becomes a great souled one. He becomes freed from the sins of killing a Brahman. He becomes freed from the sin of drinking liquor. He becomes freed from the sin of stealing gold. He becomes freed from the sin of sharing the bed with the teacher's wife. And he becomes freed also from associating with those who have committed. He becomes freed from the sin of also associating with those who have committed these sins. That is the highest state of Vishnu, the all-pervader, which the sages seek constantly as they spread their eyes towards heaven. These knowers of Brahm, with their passions cast away, with their inner senses always alert, clearly expound that highest state of Vishnu. This is the truth. This is the Upanishad. This concludes chapter 4, part 4 and the Paingala Upanishad. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.